And there we are on Restream. And there we are on YouTube. All right. Look at that. Technology, Adam. Technology and your old pal EMAC. Wonder Twin Powers activate. We have survived. We're not taking credit for conquering this one because we're a little late this morning, but we've got the fancy new backgrounds here. I'll have to get us adjusted here so we look a little more appropriate. You look like a giant, and I look like a tiny little person here, but that's okay. This is how Lofty likes to run his shows. So
I look like I can see the stream. I look like one of those Easter Island heads.
yes, the Moab, are they the Moabi? The Moab? I don't remember exactly their name, but I read a whole thing about Easter Island and how they tried to figure out what the demise of that culture was. Apparently, they believed that it was a lack of natural resources. They ended up using all the timber on the island, and that caused a lot of other problems. And then there might have been allegedly some cannibalism because they ran out of things to grow and eat besides each other. But there we are. Hey, reminds me, if you guys haven't recycled or done anything like that recently, same thing's happening in the Amazon, the rainforest in Brazil. So let's be careful. Let's enjoy DFS while we can, because the purge could be upon us soon. In any event, happy Saturday. We are brought to you by our sponsors, Yahoo, a very family-friendly place, but that is Yahoo Fantasy. We'll talk about them in a little bit. But let's allow some more people to trickle in here. Adam, how was your night last night for the old NBA DFS?
Not great, because I took advantage of late swap on DraftKings to get a bunch of Kings into my lineup and then watch them do basically nothing. So that didn't go particularly well, but whatever. 9-gamer today to get back to it.
Now, was that I did the same thing, and I thought to myself, you know what? I took half my lineups and I said, all right, this half, because I'm not as nifty with Fantasy Cruncher, and I had some game stacks that I didn't want to mess up, and I had a ton of Washington and Charlotte players, which worked out for me, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't ruin some of those lineups. It pretty much was the correct call, I think, to go in on, and I haven't done this very often before, but to go in on Hield and Farrell without that news being there. I didn't bump Corey Joseph up at all. But even in hindsight, forgetting the results, getting an opportunity to have someone that has sudden opportunity like that, who is discounted, and then it made it easier to get in your later games. Maybe you got to upgrade to a Russell Westbrook or even a James Harden that was also going to be low owned. In tournaments, it did feel like that was the correct call to try to go with some Yogi Ferrell, and I went with 20% across my combined dollars in. So those half my lineups, I set him at 40, I set Hield at 40, and then I played around with the other stuff because I didn't want to ruin my other half. But that seems to be the right way to do it. More often than not, you would gain the leverage over the field. In the tournaments, what was Hield and what was Farrell with their popularity?
If I remember right, I think Hield in the big $15 on DraftKings, Hield I think was 12, Farrell was like 12 or 13.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, I was with you. I got to, I think 20% to 25% a piece of Hield, Farrell, and Joseph. I played a ton of Bielitsa. I played, a bunch of Rashawn Holmes at low ownership. Basically, I think that it was the right call, just because you were getting a team where, if that game had been competitive, it was a pace-up spot, a pretty decent spot against Brooklyn. If that game had been more competitive, I think you would have gotten a much tighter rotation than you did, and obviously increased usage for at least some of those guys, increased minutes as well. So I think that, being able to swap at lower ownership once Bogdanovich was ruled out was the right play. It just, doesn't work out all the time.
Yeah, and that. So I just wanted to make sure we like to live in the now, in the moment, and be completely reactionary here. That's just general human nature. But my thought was that over the long haul, this was going to be a reasonable way to do things. I just had not done it before myself that way. So I didn't know if I should be angry or happy or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I think the simple analogy or way to view it is the whole thing about, if you have 3 doors to choose from and there's a prize behind one of them, and you pick, whichever door, and then one door is eliminated, you should always switch to the door that you hadn't chosen, because at that point you have a 50-50 chance instead of a 33% chance. I think it's kind of the same logic that applies there, where you naturally are just going to have lower ownership on a team like the Kings and you have new information available. So I think that, over the long run, you're better off using that information and getting as much money behind it as you can.
So you're saying math?
Yeah, something like that.
I was told there would be no math. And now I've messed up our frame. Damn it. I was doing so well. All right. In the meantime, what other lessons to be learned do we have from last night that you would like to pass on?
Luka's still really good. Yeah, I don't think there were too many huge takeaways from last night.
All right. Let me just fix this, and we'll take care of the rest of that later.
I guess one good one, and it's not I don't want it to sound results oriented because it obviously could, but when you have a situation like with Langston Galloway and Bruce Brown, obviously Langston Galloway was a good value just based on how many minutes he had been playing, but it was pretty easy to see how Brown could have the better game. So I think that was a situation where Alex and I had talked about it on the show. It wasn't that Galloway wasn't a good play, but it was just that Bruce Brown getting so much less ownership was a possible spot in tournaments you could leverage. So just keeping an eye out for spots like that where you have really popular plays that can fail pretty easily, and then you have a guy who directly negatively correlates with that play. That's a spot that you can just kind of use to your advantage in large field tournaments.
All right, our buddy Rinpack in chat says you only win or you learn, but you never lose.
Yeah,
you never lose.
I've been doing a lot of learning so far this NBA
season. Oh, that is a good one. All right, we're gonna go with ourselves here. I think we're reasonably proportionally correct here. And let's talk about the slate. Couple other things from last night to learn from the Joey Galloway. Okay, there's the Seattle Seahawks reference that very few people are going to get. The Langston Galloway, no relation to Joey as far as I know. He was so chalky. I wasn't a fan of his. I was scared that I ended up with as much DeAndre Bembry as I did with Langston Galloway, and I pushed Galloway down and let Bembry go up because I was trying to pivot there off of them. We lucked into a phenomenal Bembry game as far as I'm concerned. What did he end up with? He had at least 3 steals, if not 4. Ended up in the 40 fantasy point plateau there. We're gonna see that again today. When you get a less than dynamic player who's not rock bottom priced, and we'll talk about some of those guys with the Magic for today's example, but when you get those kind of $4,500 players, we needed a great game from Galloway, great being at least 30 fantasy points for him to even remotely be a difference maker. Do you start to suppress those guys on a night like last night where we didn't have a lot of screaming obvious plays?
Yeah, I think in general, those are my favorite spots to find pivots is when you get value guys that aren't really high per minute players, but they're going to be popular just because of the minutes that they're playing. And they're not minimum priced because like you said, even if you're 4,500, you still need those 30 to 35 fantasy points. It's not like you're really happy if he just goes out there and gets 20. And so guys like that are my favorite to try and just, take chances on other guys. Like last night I came in, I still had plenty of Galloway and Bembry, but I came in a little bit under the field on both of them, came in over the field on guys like Bruce Brown, Garrett Temple. I didn't do it, but I know Alex talked about Royce O'Neal being another similarly priced pivot you could get to. It's just that at that price range, and when you're talking about guys that average 3/4 of a fantasy point or 0.8 fantasy points per minute, they're low usage guys. They're not guys that are getting a bump in terms of having the ball in their hands. They're just getting a bump in terms of potential playing time. It's really easy for those guys to fail at high ownership, and you're not really taking that big of a risk by pivoting to some other guys around them. Whereas a lot of times when you get those mid-range guys where you get, like a CJ McCollum without Lillard, for example, it's just a completely different role for him, and he's really underpriced, and it's unusual that there's a player around him that is even comparable in terms of opportunity. So I prefer kind of trying to find those low per minute guys that are just popular because they're getting a lot of minutes and try and take my chances pivoting off of them.
All right. Ooh, seeing here, can we move? Oh, I can actually even pop out the chat. Oh, this is pretty slick. The new room here for YouTube behind the scenes. All right. There we go. All right. Okay. Now that we've got this set up, we've got a bunch of people trickling in. Let's get the day started right here. This, of course, is the NBA DFS strategy show. We're going to go game by game here. We have until 11 o'clock, at which time the DFS NFL show, Final Look with Sal Vitri and Chris Randone, will be taking place. But we are sponsored here by Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. Adam, my little Washington Wizards game stack worked for a second week in a row. I had a nice little night, doubled up in the Yahoo contest, so I'm happy with that. But they are the sponsor here. I'm going to drop the link to the DFS Cash Building Blocks article into chat. In the bottom of that, the bottom section down there, you're going to find the link, instructions, and promo code on how you can sign up and get a $30 deposit bonus there at Yahoo. That is going to be available in YSRPs immediately, which are Yahoo Sports rewards points, and those are just as good as cash. This is yesterday's article. Of course, the daily article is generally out by noon from me. I didn't quite get, I'm about halfway through it. The value was easy to find. Dangerous value was a little tougher to find, but finding that perfect play today, Adam, there's really not anybody standing out. We do have 10 teams on back-to-backs, so that is, adding in a different wrinkle. Those would be Chicago, Charlotte, Miami, Philadelphia, San Antonio, Atlanta, Cleveland, the Lakers, Detroit, and Utah. And that's not just making things a little uncomfortable, I guess, with regards to looking at stuff. We're going to have a lot of value there, both with Atlanta and then new, which we know about from yesterday, and then new for today is going to be the Orlando mixture in there. And then there is one early game, so I want to call that one out as well. Let me see. That would be, there's a 5 o'clock between Phoenix and Minnesota. So those games are not going to be in our player pool for our main slate, but we still have 9 others for this one. Let's see. Yes, 9 others. So, Adam, I'm going to turn you loose here. Chicago at Charlotte. We saw the Wizards, and it happened while I was posting the podcast, so I didn't go down and watch, but my mom's here visiting, so she and my wife were watching some Hallmark movies. The Wizards came back from 13 down in the fourth quarter. I hope you got to see it. All I saw was my fantasy totals ticking up because I had quite a few players from that game. How are you feeling about Charlotte tonight on the back-to-back? Bulls also on a back-to-back, but Charlotte, they like to play fast.
Yeah, and they don't play much defense. The Bulls have actually been a top 10 team in pace this year. I still really like Devontae Graham. He's only 7,100 on DraftKings. He's playing like 36 minutes a night in competitive games. Alex and I talked about it a bit yesterday that his rates are down and his production's down a bit since joining the starting lineup, but that we don't think that's something that will continue long term. He had a really good game last night against the Wizards, but our reasoning was that even when he was coming off the bench, he was still playing a lot of minutes alongside Terry Rozier. And even now he's having his minutes staggered. So all of his minutes aren't alongside of him. I think that it's more of a small sample size thing why his production going into last night was down a bit. So I still think he's a strong option. I still think Terry Rozier, who should play around 34 minutes, is a pretty decent option at a little bit cheaper salary than Graham also. Miles Bridges, coming off of a monster game last night, I think is reasonable. One thing in the Charlotte rotation that does look good for Bridges is his minutes had looked kind of like he might lose minutes with Nick Batum coming back, but with Cody Zeller playing fewer minutes, and then last night we only saw about 7 minutes from Biyombo, you're getting more minutes at the 5 from Marvin Williams, which is opening up more minutes at the 4, backing up Washington for Bridges. So I still think you can get 32, 33 minutes pretty easily there.
Okay, and that was one that was sort of it's been a bit of a mystery, and you did a phenomenal job there breaking it down. But what's going on with the Charlotte frontcourt? Always a tough question because those guys are relatively talented. We know last year, even the year before, there were certain games that were going to be Marvin Williams games. There were certain games that were going to be Cody Zeller games because they tended to play their 3-man front court rotation based upon the opponent. And if you kind of got into the rhythm of what the opponent was going to be doing, you could get a nice little boost. Now, these guys weren't going to blow anybody's socks off, but they had the opportunity to get 30, 35 fantasy points in the appropriate situation. And because they weren't doing this on a regular basis, because it was matchup based, their salaries were relatively down. Haven't caught up to whatever rhythm it is yet because it doesn't seem to be quite as much consistency yet this season. But that is the a little bit of the nuances that you want to look for and find, because those are where you can help yourself out on the short slates for the if it's a 5-game main slate, or if it's a 2 or 3 game sub slate, and you've got teams like that in situations like that without the obvious NBA somebody's resting, somebody's hurt value plays. It's a place where you can go. And those were kind of in the sweet spot last year. Hasn't been as much this year. On the other side, here we've got Atlanta. Chandler Parsons actually playing. I didn't know that he was going to anymore. It's a back-to-back. I think he will probably spontaneously combust if he sets foot on the floor at this point, Adam. You've got Evan Turner. Okay, there's an exciting play. He's playing between 10 and 15 minutes per game. Woohoo, that's awesome. We do have Vince Carter, who wanted to play every game this season. That was going to be his last hurrah, and then missed 5 with various reasons. But he is back. And then you've got a bunch of starters here that may or may not be talented. DeAndre Hunter picking things up, getting some heavy minutes. We know all about Trey Young. We know all about Jabari Parker. But question marks here with Damian Jones, DeAndre Bembry. You've got Alex Len and Damian Jones combined. They have 12 fouls. I guess that's an asset. But what do you want to do with the Hawks on the back-to-back in this good matchup, but feels like a little bit of fool's gold with the DeAndres there, Hunter and Bembry?
Yeah, not the best spot, obviously, going up against a quality Toronto team. Bembry's still cheap. Reddish is questionable. If Reddish is in, then I don't have interest really in either one. If Reddish is out, you should get 30-plus minutes from Bembry again. And it's kind of the same thing as last night. You don't expect that 45-point game, but Bembry would still be a reasonable option just based on the minutes if Reddish is out.
All right. Now, we're starting to say we've got 18 teams in action here. Trey Young definitely going to be someone that is, with regards to raw points, up near the top there. Of course, Giannis Antetokounmpo is going to be number 1 in most projection systems, but he is appropriately priced. He is up there. What is he? 12.9 on FanDuel. He's 12 even on DraftKings. He's 58 on Yahoo. So we may not be able to just jam him in, as the kids like to say. But you've got Trey Young, who is 20% discount approximately on most of the sites. With he's at 9,800 on DK, 96 on FanDuel, and 46 on Yahoo. How is Trey Young going to fit into your evening? Looking at it now, without, of course, all of the cards on the table.
I don't really like it that much. I mean, obviously he can go off in any given matchup, but he's not really priced down for a quality Toronto defense. They've been the 3rd most efficient defense in terms of defending pick and roll this year. Young leads the league in pick and roll possessions per game. I don't think that there's anything that makes it stand out as a good spot for Young. So you're basically relying on him just being really, really efficient and just having a good shooting game, which obviously he can do. But I would feel better if we were getting some sort of a discount for the matchup.
All right. It looks like we just had our first ownership run pushed here, Adam. I'm just going to hit some highlights here so we have some baselines going forward. Andre Drummond looks like he's number 1 on DK. Of course, there's a decent chance that Blake Griffin won't play on the back-to-back. We have Drummond at 35, Barrett at 34, McConnell coming in at 27. We know that Brogdon is doubtful. McConnell's relatively healthy, so he could be in the mix at a nice price. Over on FanDuel, we have Aaron Holiday, who's coming in on half of the lineups. We'll talk about him. We have Andre Drummond there at 32. Pascal Siakam is at 32. Trey Young, so I wanted to get to, he is at 30 right now on FanDuel. Over on Yahoo, it's a bunch of the value guys that are popping thus far. Wendell Carter, Miles Bridges, Barrett, Kevin Love. Those guys are all on a third of their teams. But then you got guys like Kem Birch, Terrence Ross. We'll talk about the $10 Orlando Magic, which are going to play a prominent role on Yahoo tonight. But they've got Antetokounmpo at 31 there. Easier to get to him because you got 3 Magic guys that are at $10 a piece. You may not want all 3 in your lineup at once, but you can get to Giannis a little bit easier there. Just some high-level stuff to consider. Anything else you want to mention from the Atlanta and Charlotte game?
Atlanta and Toronto?
Sorry. I'm all over the place. Sorry. Oh, I'm playing last night's games in my head. I'm not paying attention. This is okay. Wheels came off early today. All right, I'm gonna sit back, sip some soda here. We're gonna let you talk because that is what everybody wants to hear. But we're gonna finish up with the Chicago side of things against
Okay,
Charlotte. Sorry, I jumped ahead there on Atlanta. I got all excited. It was red for the Bulls. It was red for Atlanta. My face is now red from absolute embarrassment.
Well, now I understand why you thought Trey Young had a good matchup. So
yes,
that makes more sense.
My sincere apologies to everyone. Everyone. See that egg coming down my face. There we go.
From the Chicago side, like, it is a good matchup for them. Charlotte hasn't been a good team defensively. They are on a back-to-back. The problem you run into, though, is just the Chicago rotation. Zach LaVine leads this team in minutes with like 31 and a half minutes per game. And that obviously is a problem with just how Jim Boylan's running his rotation. You have Arcidiacono playing a bunch of minutes behind LaVine. You have Kobe White splitting minutes with either Chandler Hutchison or Shaq Harrison, depending on which one of them starts. If White shoots well, then you can get more minutes from him, but it's not like he's locked into those minutes. There's plenty of games where he's playing 23 or 24 minutes. So he's someone that at 5K on DraftKings, I think you can go to in large field tournaments and just hope that you get the game where he shoots well and he plays the entire fourth quarter. But, there's obviously a lot of downside there. Markkanen basically is playing 30 minutes where Carter's not in foul trouble because Daniel Gafford is backing up Carter now, which is making basically 48 minutes have to be split between Markkanen and Young. Wendell Carter Jr., I think, is probably the most appealing play here because when he's not in foul trouble, you're getting 32 plus minutes from him. It's a really bad Charlotte front court. So I think out of all the Bulls guys, Carter's the one that stands out the most to me.
All right. That makes a lot more sense now. Goodness gracious. That was... people are saying, oh, we get it, EMAC. EMAC confirmed hungover, lighten up, etc. No, Adam can attest. My mom's in town. There are no Bears. There's going to bed early. Got an 86 sleep score with my Fitbit. That doesn't happen very often. I should be well refreshed and on the top of my game. Oops, perhaps not. But you know who is going to be on top of their game? Adam, did you actually join the old Fred VanVleet fan club contest?
Yeah.
So we have special guests. I'm going to drop this link into chat because, of course, it is a Toronto Raptors day. I'm going to put in the link to the Fred Van Elite contest. Adam is joining us today because this is a private league, so he can play in it. I'm dropping the link to my pinned tweet. What you'll want to do is go to that, join the DK Osmo League, and then that's where I post the Fred VanVleet contest. So I dropped that this morning and we already have it's 75, just $1 to enter. It's regular DK payouts, but if you finish first with an Osmo avatar, then you will get 30 free days of Osmo premium content. And I think I've given out 7 of those thus far because not everybody who wins has an Osmo avatar, but you really should. But you'll definitely want to check that one out. It is going to be a lot of fun. And Adam's in there. So you can see if Adam selects one of his approximately 300 lineups, if it's a good one. Now, Adam, just so you know, you do not have to play Fred VanVleet. I am the only one required to play him, but he is going to be a very good play.
Yeah, I'll probably play him anyway.
Yes, right now. So let's go on to our next game. This one will spend a little bit more time on the Orlando side than we will on the Pacers, I'm guessing. But let's start off with the Pacers here. Aaron Holiday is a great value at 4,000 on FanDuel. Not so much on DraftKings, not so much on Yahoo. So he is very site specific. We know. Even if Brogdon were to come back, we've now seen Holiday start for 6 or 7 games. He's coming off a really good one, but hadn't really popped prior to that. Talented youngster, but not exactly a world beater. At 4,000, he's still someone you want to get in your lineups. DraftKings, Yahoo, not so much on that one. The other. So it looks like people on the front court are going to be healthy for the Pacers, and there is a chance that. I'm blanking on his. Why am I blanking? Jeremy Lamb should be back in the lineup. So that directly is going to impact TJ Warren a little bit, but they could use some extra scoring, extra wing depth. How does the return of Jeremy Lamb impact stuff? He missed like 7 games.
Yeah, I mean, I think for the most part, it just takes away a lot of the minutes for guys like Justin Holiday, potentially Doug McDermott. If this were a more appealing matchup, I would be interested in going to a Lamb or a Warren still. But Lamb being back, I think, kind of just makes it so neither of them are particularly appealing against a really slow Orlando team that should still be, pretty solid defensively, even with their injuries. So I think what really stands out is the backcourt. Aaron Holiday, as you mentioned, only 4K on FanDuel. I think still should play around 30 minutes. TJ McConnell, I have at 24 minutes, only 3,300 on DraftKings compared to 6,600 for Holiday. McConnell really, really stands out there. So, depending on site, both of those guys are really appealing. You should still get around 36 minutes, 34 to 36 minutes from Sabonis and Turner in the front court. Reasonable price tags there, but again, not a particularly great matchup in terms of pace against Orlando. So I think that going to the cheap guards is the most appealing spot for the Pacers.
Yeah, and for overall perspective, Holiday 66 on DK, McConnell 33, half. 20 and 10, half again on Yahoo. So that's a big difference. Somehow McConnell's $100 more than Aaron Holiday over there on FanDuel. Hat tip to FanDuel. Thank you. We appreciate when you care. Looking at the bigs here, we kind of know what we're going to get. If you were comparing them to each other, clearly power forward for Sabonis, center for Turner, but Turner coming in at a discount of about 20%, it looks like, on most of the sites, a little more on DraftKings. Is that enough to push the needle one way or the other for you between those two players as direct comparators?
I think they're really close. I would still give a slight edge to Sabonis just because he does so much when he's on the floor. As far as assists, rebounding, and scoring goes. If Jonathan Isaac's defending him, that's not great for Sabonis. But again, I don't love either of these guys. I think that I would give the slight edge between them to Sabonis, though. They're both just kind of secondary options for me in the spot.
All right. The Maharishi says Irish coffee and ibuprofen. Ibuprofen is the way I get my weekend started. And let's give Emac some light, because he's not ignoring his mom for nothing. I know I was telling Adam I already got the guilt trip today for this one, but she will get all the attention this afternoon. But in any event, yeah, a couple likes would help. Let's talk about Orlando, Adam, because there is going to be a lot to cover here. We know that Aaron Gordon is out, as is Nikolai Vucevic for they're not even going to look at Vucevic's ankle for another 10 days or so, so that's not good. Gordon, they've said, is his ankle sprain not quite as bad, but he's going to miss at least 2 or 3 games. So that's going to thrust Khem Birch into a very prominent role. Wes Iwundo, I haven't seen confirmation, but I would think he's going to start for one of them. Jonathan Isaac, you mentioned last night on the Early Bird podcast, he could have a really prominent role if they go small. It'll be interesting to see what happens in this game against the Pacers, but Isaac could see some time at center. How do you want to break down the rotation here? Because this is all of a sudden very, very thin for the Magic.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's moving parts here. Bird's expected to start at center. I have him in for 26 minutes right now. I have 16 going to Bamba, and then I have the remaining 6 or 8 or whatever is left going to Jonathan Isaac in small ball lineups. So I think that Birch at minimum salary on Yahoo is really appealing. 4,300 is a really nice price tag on DraftKings. 5,700, where you can only roster one center on FanDuel, is much less appealing. So I would say that's the worst out of the 3 sites to roster him. Iwundu, I don't think is really a play. He doesn't do anything when he's on the floor. Last year he played 518 minutes without Vooch on the floor. He averaged 2/3 of a point per minute. It's just not a really appealing spot or anything. So I'm kind of ignoring him, but I do think that with Vooch being out, you should get more usage for Evan Fournier, not necessarily more per minute production, because it hurts his efficiency a bit. But last year he did have a 24.5% usage rate without Vooch on the floor. I think that it opens the door for 28 to 30 minutes from Terrence Ross, who had a 28.5% usage rate in 1,200 minutes without Vooch on the floor last year. So I think that's a really interesting tournament option. And then Jonathan Isaac should be more productive, because I think he does get at least a handful of minutes at the 5. He's a good player anyway, but his price tag has already come up kind of preemptively on DraftKings to 7,500.
All right. Let's see. That is going to be the source of value across most of the sites. We'll we have a decent chance that we're going to get some Scalabissier and some other guys in here. But these guys come in just on Yahoo. Isaac is 26, Fournier is 21, DJ Augustine is 11. Every other Orlando Magic worth projecting is 10.
Yeah, and you mentioned Augustine. I think him and Fultz both can pick up a couple of extra minutes here too. We saw them get some playing time alongside each other last game. I have them both at 28 minutes, which doesn't make them guys that I love, but it is a little bit big. It's a little bit better projection than normally you get, when Vooch and Gordon are in.
Let's see, on DraftKings, it's Isaac at 75, Fournier at 64, and then everybody else is below 5,000. And then FanDuel, they lowered Aaron Holiday's price, but they goosed some of the Magic guys here. 67 for Isaac, which I think is very nice at small forward. 6 even for Fournier, kind of on the fence there. Birch, I don't know how good his minutes are going to, even with that boost at 5,700 if I want to go there. But Ross at 52 is adequate, and then the rest of the guards are 5K. So that's sort of where pricing goes.
Someone pointed out Birch as a power forward on FanDuel, so that does make him a little bit more appealing than if you were a center, but it's still not a great price tag, and I think there's going to be enough kind of cheaper value that stands out above that salary.
Okay, so that one he'll probably come out in the wash there. Moving on to our next game here. Let's get the filters set up. We're going to talk San Antonio and the New York Knickerbockers here. We don't have official word yet on DeJounte Murray. Now, he has not yet played on a back-to-back. Oh, one quick question here. Do you back to the other game because it's a good one coming in from Premium. Do you think the pace goes up without Gordon and Vucevic for the Magic?
I'm trying to look at last year. I don't think if it does, I think it would be more of it's going up because they're the slowest team and then they're not the slowest anymore. I don't think they'll play fast. They actually last year, if you look at Evan Fournier's pace with and without Vooch on the floor, it was basically the same.
All right. And we talked about pace. Pace is something that you want to... So the fastest team this year is Milwaukee. They're averaging 109 possessions per 48. The slowest team is Orlando. They're averaging 99.8. So that's 10 possessions apart. So it doesn't seem like a lot, but depending on what your reference point is, it's still a difference maker. The bottom 5 teams and the top 5 teams compared against each other, that's where the real difference comes in. The rest of the teams, if you look from number 6 Washington at 107 down to number 24 Dallas at 102, that's just 5 possessions difference. It gets a little bit closer. It's helpful, but it doesn't always mean a huge impact. If you get 2 top 10 teams playing against each other, yes. If you get 2 of the bottom 5 teams playing against each other, yes. But the thing you also want to remember is this comes out with projected points total that you can get from Las Vegas and other places. So you kind of want to be aware of what it is. Everybody is playing dramatically faster these days, and defense is a lot different. Especially they've really taken into account the 3-pointers, people going in the matchup zones more and more now. It's not quite the same game that it was even 2 or 3 years ago. So your defense versus positions, even if you branch things out to versus front court versus back court, etc., it's tougher to tell. We start looking at some more advanced stats, and Adam and Laffy do a phenomenal job, and Josh as well, looking at this. But 3-pointers allowed, where are those shots coming from, rebound percentages, points in the paint, stuff like that. That's starting to tell more of a story as we get into just more and more positionless basketball. And with teams playing faster, it means there's less half-court sets. So it means there's a lot more transition game, not necessarily fast breaks, but you're getting 3-on-2s, 4-on-3s, etc. So the whole team's not coming down there. So what we used to think of it as the baseline, if you've been playing DFS for 4, 5, 6 years now, it's entirely different now. It's a whole new ball game. So that is something that you want to take into account when you're making your teams. And if you're listening to people analyze stuff, pace up doesn't quite mean what it used to mean previously.
And as far as if you're looking at Orlando lineups this year, obviously it's still we don't really have the lineup or any sample size on the lineups we're going to get today, but the 3 most used lineups for Orlando have Vooch. The next one has Gordon, but doesn't have Vooch. DJ Augustine, Terrence Ross, Gordon, Aminu, Bamba. That one's played has a 103 pace compared to 97.6 for their most used lineup. But then the next most used non-Vooch lineup is at 100. The next one's at 97.9. So again, I think that you probably get them playing a little bit faster, but not enough. It's not like it's going to turn them into a fast-paced team, I don't think.
Yeah. But very good question to ask, and those are the kind of things that you're going to want to see because, here Adam comes up with our reasonable best guess answer, and, if you're just thinking of it, hey, they're losing 2 of their bigger front court guys, they'll probably have to play faster. Well, maybe not in this case, but definitely good question to ask, and those are the kind of things where you have to find that ever elusive edge now. It's residing in matchups and stats and situations such as that. Anything else you want to talk about from this game? Some of our other games will go a little bit quicker, but we're going to get so much of our discount dandies from this one. I wanted to spend some time on it.
No, I think that's everything from this one.
All right. San Antonio and New York. San Antonio has now lost 8 in a row. I know the 7 in a row was the first time since 1997 season. So yikes. Sorry for the Spurs fans. We have still, sorry for the Knicks fans. The Spurs are actually 2.5-point favorites on the back-to-back here. We believe that DeJounte Murray will be sitting out most back-to-backs this season. That is the intended plan. He's, of course, coming off the reconstructive ACL surgery from last season. Do we know Derek White still dealing with a sore foot? He has missed a couple games, listed as questionable at this point. If he's out and Murray's out, then we can start to consider Patty Mills. We can maybe look to Bryn Forbes. I suspect they're just going to kind of be placeholder value at this point, as other plays will appear for this one from the New York side. We'll have to see what happens. I believe Fizdale's actually bringing out a big giant bingo ball thing, and he's going to spin it and pick players' minutes out of that today. Adam, what do you want to do here? Let's start off with the Knicks. Why not? We need a good chuckle.
Yeah, so I think that the Knicks are in a good spot. Obviously, the Spurs are playing at a reasonable pace this year. They are terrible defensively, and there is some uncertainty with the Knicks rotation. Taj Gibson is, as far as I know, still starting, and so you have to give around 16 minutes to him, which muddies the water a little bit in the front court. But Julius Randle, one good thing for him is that basically we're just seeing Kevin Knox play fewer minutes. It seems like you're getting the 4 and the 5 minutes basically split between Gibson, Robinson, Portis, and Randle, and then Knox didn't even play a minute in the second half last game. So I think that as long as they're going that direction, I feel okay projecting 34 minutes for Randle. I have Robinson at 24, Portis at 22, and then Gibson getting the rest of those 96. So I still think Randle's a quality play here. I think that Robinson is an okay tournament option, but just because of Knox's role seemingly changing and him kind of moving up a position, it makes me feel pretty decent about going back to Randle.
All right. With regards to the guards, that was a bad transition. Guards, yeah. All right. Muddied that one. We'll fix that one. We've got a lot of question marks. You've got it's a grab bag. Dennis Smith Jr. He missed a few games with the death in the family, but doesn't really seem to be in the Knicks' plans. You've got Frankie Ntilikina popping up every couple games. You have who else is in the mix here? It's just it's a mess. There's no one you can really count on. Damari Carroll gets ceremonial minutes from time to time, and then RJ Barrett. I guess RJ Barrett is the guy. What are you projecting him? Are you going what is your baseline for him these days? 34, 36 minutes?
I have him at 34. He played 36 last game, but we hadn't seen that in a while. It seems like Fizdale finally decided that maybe he shouldn't be trying to kill his rookie. So, I mean, I think 34 is reasonable. Like, you're going to get more than that sometimes. You're going to get 32 minutes or 31 minutes sometimes. But I think that at 5,700, he's a pretty decent option if you expect around 34 minutes. Second on the team behind Randle in usage. and it's just a pretty decent price tag. So I don't know that I necessarily agree that he should be the second highest owned player on DraftKings at 5,700, but I do think that he's a quality option.
All right, turning our attention here to the Spurs. Let's talk about it first. We're pretty sure that Murray's going to be out. Let's talk about it as if Derek White is also out. We've got Patty Mills. His price is coming up. He is a very good NBA player. Does everything that Coach Pop wants him to do. From a fantasy perspective, leaves a ton to be desired, and I don't like where his price is at. He can go out there and play a very empty 30 minutes. He can go out there and play 20 minutes and somehow end up with 30 fantasy points if his three is falling. So he's someone I don't really trust. Not really a fan of Bryn Forbes. If I go into the front court here, Adam, and we look at LaMarcus Aldridge, who should be in a nice matchup spot here. He has topped 40 fantasy points 3 times on the entire season. That's not very good. He's playing in the low 30s, low to 32 to 35 minutes per game here, but that's not very exciting if we don't have the upside. That's not going to help us in tournaments. Is there anything that you like from the Spurs?
Not a ton, because I think that the guards are priced pretty much correctly, regardless of what news we get. If Murray's out and White's in, I don't really like any of the guards. If White's out, I don't think it means Mills suddenly plays 36 minutes. I would expect that he still plays around 30 and that Lonnie Walker enters the rotation. So there's not a whole lot there. I do think if Murray sits, it's a bump for DeMar DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge. Aldridge's rebounding numbers are up this year without Murray on the floor. DeRozan has seen his assists go up a bit. So I think that they would get a little bit of a bump. They still wouldn't be core plays for me. I would just like them a little bit more if Murray's out. But overall, I think the Spurs are pretty close to accurately priced.
Alrighty then. Let's get on to a fun game here. Let's head over here to Toronto and Atlanta. Hey, finally, we're going to talk about Atlanta for real this time, Adam. You've got Toronto, Fred VanVleet. I like to call him Fred Van Elite, playing more minutes than darn near anybody in the league at this point. I keep saying it. He's a little bit slower, a little bit shorter, a little bit doughier than everybody else on the court, but he is getting the minutes, and that is getting it done. Great matchup for him. Fair price point for the minutes he's going to be getting. Siakam is where it starts to become interesting on today's slate. How are you feeling about him? Arguably, he does have access to 50, 55 fantasy points, particularly in this matchup. Do you think we'll see that as a reasonable outcome for Siakam?
Yeah, I think him and VanVleet are both really good options, especially VanVleet, whose price tag for whatever reason just hasn't moved. Still 7,300 on DraftKings, playing 38 to 40 minutes in competitive games. He obviously is more productive without Kyle Lowry on the floor. So I think VanVleet's a core play here against an Atlanta team that has picked up their pace. They're up to 11th in the league. They were playing slow at the beginning of the year, but we definitely expected them to be one of the fastest teams in the league, and now they're playing faster. They've been the 4th least efficient defense. So I think there's all kinds of reasons to like VanVleet in any format. Siakam's a little tougher just because he gets more expensive, but in competitive games, you're still getting around 40 minutes from him. He hasn't averaged, he hasn't been as good on a per minute basis without Lowry and Ibaka as we would expect, but his effective field goal percentage is way down from where we would expect it to be. And if you look at his numbers last year without Lowry or Kawhi on the floor, he didn't see a big drop off in terms of efficiency. So I think it's more of a sample size thing than anything. I think that you see some big games from him going forward. Like I don't think it's a case where he is just losing efficiency because Lowry's not out there. So I would say that at their respective prices, VanVleet number 1, Siakam number 2.
All right. Ibaka not yet ruled out, but he is still doubtful. I don't think he's going to be there. Kind of a mixed bag moving down to Powell, Anunoby, RHJ, Rondae Hollis-Jefferson, Marc Gasol, just not really getting it done per se these days. It's really looking like a two-man show here from a fantasy perspective. Adam, anything else you want to point out on the Raptors?
I think Powell, OG, and Gasol are all reasonable secondary options because they should, in most game flows, they're going to get low to mid 30s in minutes. It is a good spot against Atlanta. It's just that they're not locked into those minutes like VanVleet and Siakam are. Sometimes you're going to see OG lose minutes to RHJ. You're going to see Powell lose minutes to Terrence Davis. So just not as consistent minutes and also not as good that fantasy producers as VanVleet and Siakam, but they're guys that are still reasonably priced and in a lot of games are going to play big minutes here.
Yeah, and Toronto favored by 7.5 here. They are 7-3 in their last 10. Of course, they are the defending champs. Right now, they are 4th in the Eastern Conference. They're 2 games back from the Bucks in first there. So it's, or 2.5 games, but it's. I'm sorry, I did the math wrong. 1.5 games. Got to get back to doing the math right, Adam. Baseball becomes second nature, but when you start to look at it for basketball, doing this stuff in your head gets a little more tricky. For me, the numbers aren't quite as big there, so I had to recalibrate that. So interesting one there for Toronto. Should be a win for them, but we've seen Atlanta play teams very, very tough. I'm going to drop my pin tweet one more time in chat. There's 7 spots left, so you'll want to click on my pin tweet. Go join the Awesemo DraftKings League, and that is where you will gain access to the Fred Van Elite contest. If you win that league with an Awesemo avatar, you will get 30 free days of Awesemo premium content. Definitely check that out. But get into that Awesemo DK League, because these are filling up very quick. I posted this 90 minutes ago, and it's almost full. So I'm going to expand this to 100, probably after the Thanksgiving holidays, but definitely join in that league so you can get in on the fun. Atlanta, Adam, obviously John Collins still serving the suspension. We kind of hit on Trey Young when I was confusing him with being on a team that wears red with another team that wears red. You've got Alex Lynn, kind of a mess. Mentioned the DeAndres briefly. Here's going to be some of our other value sources here. What do you like from the Hawks? What do you see from Popcorn Machine? We're getting minutes from Hunter. Is his shot going to keep falling? Is Bembry going to continue to get a ton of steals, buoying his success? What do you like here from Atlanta?
Not a whole lot. Not a good matchup against Toronto. Young's not as cheap as I would like in this spot. Bembry, if Reddish is out and he gets to start, Bembry's still a decent point per dollar option, but obviously pay attention to ownership, keep your expectations in check because it is a tough matchup and you can't expect him to produce like he did last night. Minutes should be there for Hunter, but again, just not a really great fantasy producer. So mild interest in the Hawks guys.
All right, let's maneuver along here. Miami at Philadelphia. Both these teams are on back-to-backs. Joel Embiid has said he's going to play in the back-to-back. Starting off with him, Adam, what did the tea leaves tell you with regards to minutes? He played 27.5 minutes last night.
Sorry, which
Embiid minutes?
Yeah, he was in foul trouble last night. I have him at 33 minutes here. I think that it's probably a pretty wide range, but it's been really difficult to project his minutes accurately all season because we've seen some games where he's just playing 30, other games where he's playing 36. I have him at 33 tonight, and I think that he's a pretty strong option. He's still not expensive, decent matchup, so I think that he's fine.
All right, so he's coming in at 5% or less on all 3 sites today. How do you feel about him for tournaments?
Yeah, I think that's appealing in tournaments. He's far from the optimal play, especially on DraftKings, where he's $900 more expensive than Drummond. But that should keep his ownership down. So I think, he's averaging 1.6 points per minute. And again, it's not the best matchup going against Miami, but he is essentially matchup proof. And if you can get 32 or 33 minutes at low ownership, it's a good tournament play. It's just not a guy that I'd be looking to in cash.
All right. How about Ben Simmons in cash, particularly on DraftKings? Get that point guard and small forward eligibility. He messed around last night, did get a triple-double. He's doing his best Jimmy Chitwood impersonation. He got a three-pointer 2 games ago, Adam. That's amazing. I believe that was his first of his career. What do you like about Simmons, Tobias Harris, Horford, anybody else as you branch out?
Not a whole lot. It's just, Embiid's one thing because he averages so many points per minute, but as a whole, Miami's been really efficient defensively this year. I don't think that Simmons' price tag is all that appealing. Harris and Horford are both relatively inexpensive, but I don't like them as much tonight as I did last night against San Antonio. I think that at the forward positions, you're going to have plenty of value today. So just kind of secondary options from Philly.
All right, we're getting a question in chat. Do you think that Horford plays on the back-to-backs?
Yeah, just because I haven't heard anything else.
All right. Ready for the Miami side.
Yeah.
Jimmy Butler may be familiar with some of these guys on Philadelphia. You've got Bam Adebayo, who generally has spirited matchups there with Joel Embiid. Goran Dragic is interesting, at least, on DraftKings at 5,400. I don't really feel good about the other pieces and parts. They have unstable minutes. Their prices are kind of all over the place. Kelly Olynyk is 10 on Yahoo, but I really think we have better options there. What do you like, if anything, from the Heat?
Not a whole lot. Butler's price tag finally came up on DraftKings. He's been expensive on FanDuel for a while. I think Bam Adebayo is appealing on DraftKings. His salary dropped to 7,400. So that's a pretty nice price tag. The problem is that he's a center, whereas on FanDuel he's a power forward, which makes him a little bit more appealing. But 7,400 is a pretty solid price point. 8,600 on FanDuel is a little bit tougher to get to, I think. But he's the guy that looks the best to me. But overall, it's just not a game that I'm really that excited about.
All right, question from chat. So I'm gonna have to ask. I'm gonna have to know if you can answer it. Who the f is Jimmy Chitwood?
I have no idea.
Oh god, that hurts. That hurts a lot. Have you heard of the movie? Because you may not have seen it. Have you heard of the movie Hoosiers?
Yeah.
Okay, he is the really good player on their team. The guy who doesn't miss. Jimmy Chitwood. All right. Okay, fine, whatever. And the next person that says, okay, boomer gets banned. I am Generation X, not even close to being a boomer. All right. Although I do have boomer tendencies. Get off my lawn, everybody. Get off my lawn. Portland, Cleveland. We have Cleveland coming in on a back-to-back here. Just wanted to make sure I got that one right. We have seen Tristan Thompson. We have seen Kevin Love not play on some back-to-backs here. Starting off with them, Love is the one guy I'm quite interested in. What do you want to do here from Cleveland?
Not a whole lot.
I'm just calling up their minutes from last night to see if we can get anything.
Assuming that we don't get Kevin Love or Tristan Thompson resting, I don't love either one. I think that I think Love and Thompson are the two that are most interesting. Like if you can get 32 to 34 minutes from Thompson, it's a decent spot. Kevin Love is relatively they're the two that stand out the most to me, but Cleveland as a whole just isn't a team that I really like going to all that much.
All right. 25 minutes last night for Love, 26 for Thompson. Cleveland is 4-11, and they are, I don't know, going nowhere fast. Let's see here. Some people say, thanks for the movie trivia. Hoosiers is overrated. Coach Carter, 10 times better. I haven't seen Coach Carter. Is that the one with who's the guy? Magic Mike? Is that the one with that actor in it?
It's Samuel, and I don't remember if it has Channing Tatum.
Okay, I thought Channing Tatum. Okay, Space Jam. I think we can all agree Space Jam was pretty good. I even liked that. And then Air Bud. Ooh, not so sure we can go with Air Bud. He Got Game. That was a good movie as well. Let's see. I haven't seen Coach Carter because I'm generally older than most of our audience here. There was one other good one in there. Oh, Blue Chips. Have you ever seen Blue Chips with Nick Nolte?
I don't think so.
It's actually pretty good. It's got Shaq, it's got Penny Hardaway, and then I forget who the other guy is that play. He wasn't the best in the NBA, but yeah, it's actually a decent movie there. So I do like Nick Nolte in that movie. All right, let us get back to today, present time. The Portland side of things, it sounds like, at least from what we've seen thus far, that Lillard is going to play. He missed a couple games with back spasms. The interesting thing is Hassan Whiteside may not play, still dealing with the sore hip. He was out the last, I think it's been the 2 games now, but Scalabissier was outstanding filling in for him, or at least picking up those additional rotational minutes here. We have Carmelo Anthony in the fold here, Adam. So, I guess that's a boost to the Cleveland players, whoever he's allegedly guarding. What do you want to do here with the Trailblazers?
So Lillard probable makes it so McCollum is pretty clearly overpriced since he, will take a backseat to Lillard now. It makes it a little tougher to trust Anthony too, because you just have to imagine that he's not going to have the ball in his hands as much as he has. His price tag's still okay. I expect around 30 minutes from him. So at 5K on DraftKings, I don't mind taking a shot there. I'm just not as confident as I was, last game when he was 4,200 without Lillard. The big news obviously will be Hassan Whiteside, who is questionable. If he's out, last game we saw Anthony Tolliver start and play about 31 minutes. Scal played 28 off the bench, playing a bunch of minutes alongside Tolliver as well. If he's out, I have them both projected for 26 minutes today. Scal's price tag jumped dramatically on DraftKings to 5,600. It would be pretty tough for me to get there, I think. Obviously, you don't expect 50 plus fantasy points out of him again. On FanDuel, he is 4,200. So I would say that Scal's a really good value option on FanDuel if Whiteside's out.
All right, and there's not really much else to say in this one. We have the clear-cut plays. A lot of it's going to be dictated by pricing, and Portland is road favorites by 5 points here, so that makes it kind of fun a little bit there to look to the Blazers. 3 games to go here. I want to remind you of our sponsors here. That is Yahoo Fantasy. They, of course, have the $200,000 baller. That is their NFL flagship contest. That is going off on Sunday morning, 20,000 to first. That has not filled yet, so that provides a little additional room within there. It gives us a little bit of additional incentive. And speaking of incentive, I've got an article here I'm going to put into chat. This is our free Yahoo $1 Million Baller article. You can check that out. At the bottom section, it does tell you how you can sign up for Yahoo, get $30 in YSRPs with your initial DFS deposit. They will match that up to $30, and those are available for use into any contest immediately. So check that out. They also have NBA. They occasionally are still putting in their rake free or their management fee free tournaments. They usually have 1 or 2 of those a day. They're smaller dollars, and sometimes they're single entry for football. You want to jump in those early. Make sure that they're there when you're around when they post those. And then the other thing for their NBA is a lot of fun there. They do have CSV upload and edit capabilities now, but because it is kind of a tertiary or farther away site for some of the mass multi-entry pros, like the guy sitting next to me here, they're not playing necessarily the 150 there for NBA because it's hard to manage multiple sites, especially leading up to lock. So there still is some advantage there, and their management fee is generally between 10 and 12%. So that is 25% less than what we're seeing on the other larger sites. So give them a look over there. That is Yahoo Fantasy, Yahoo Daily Fantasy. 3 games to go here, Adam. We have, is it exciting or not exciting that we get the news now that Anthony Davis is expected to play the night before games now that he is with the Lakers?
Makes my life easier.
Yeah, a little bit less guessing there. We have the Lakers at Memphis. This is not grit and grind. This is Olay defense, and let's play as fast as we can for the Grizzlies. That's going to make some things interesting here for the Lakers. First off, let's talk about the Grizzlies. I guess we would say Ja Morant would be their flagship guy. They're the standard bearer. Rookie, they've said they don't want to run him completely into the ground. Where are you estimating his minutes today? Are you going to get him up to 35?
I have him at 30. Okay. I think that there's at least a chance he plays more. We got 35 last game in a game that wasn't even really competitive in the fourth quarter. I don't know if that was just because they had a bunch of time off between that game and today, or if they're loosening their restrictions on him or what. But I definitely don't want to go to a 35-minute projection. I think that 32 is like as high as I would go. But even at 30, I think he ends up being a reasonable option. 6,700 on DraftKings, about a 31% usage rate this year. He's a good fantasy player. He's cheap enough where even in 30 minutes and in a matchup that isn't particularly good against a slow Lakers team that's good defensively, I still think that Morant is a quality option.
All right.
I would say that I prefer 7,300 VanVleet to 6,700 Morant.
All right. Sometimes we would say it's pronounced Van Elite, but that's just me. We have Jonas Valanciunas actually getting to play against more traditional centers tonight with JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard on the other side. Oh, wait, Dwight Howard, somehow he's played for this team in the past. He is an option. Dylan Brooks, Jay Crowder gets a little bit tougher. Brandon Clark. Lakers not playing as fast, but they are playing, or they're middle of the pack, but they're playing some phenomenal defense this year. I really don't want to go to Hacks and Jackson, but I could see some Valanciunas tonight. What else tweaks your beak from the Grizzlies?
Yeah, I think Valanciunas is fine. He played 30 minutes in a competitive game recently, was on track for another 28 to 30 in that blowout against the Warriors. So I think that, I have him at 28 minutes. He's a pretty decent value at 6,200 on DraftKings at center. I would say that he's my second favorite Memphis play behind Morant.
All right.
And also
with regards to the Lakers here, again, they're on the back-to-back. We should see, 30-ish minutes from Davis, from James. Lakers favored by 7 in this one. Kyle Kuzma, 4,900 there on DraftKings, starting to become somewhat of an interesting price. Production just hasn't quite been there yet for him, Adam. Let's see. In his games, he had played 26. Last night, he got poked in the eye the game before, so he only played 9. The one prior to that, 25, 26, and then 30. So let's just focus on those games for the time being. Fantasy points in those games is what, about maybe 0.8 per minute. Just eyeballing that one there. What are you thinking about Kuzma?
It's just really tough to project him for a lot of minutes right now because we're not getting lineups where like he's playing alongside Davis and the center. So as long as McGee is playing like 14 to 18 minutes and Howard's playing like 18 to 22, that only leaves so many minutes for Kuzma when you assume that Davis is playing 36 to 37. So I have Kuzma at 26 minutes. He hasn't been that productive on a per minute basis so far this season, averaging 0.87 DraftKings points per minute, 23.3% usage, not really getting much in the way of peripherals. So like he's, I guess, okay if you wanted to take a shot in tournaments at low ownership because the matchup is appealing, but it's not really someone that stands out to me all that much just because it's tough for me to give him minutes, and I do think we have plenty of value at Ford today.
All right. Anything else with the Lakers front court before we move on?
Davis obviously is in a really good spot. 10K on DraftKings. Nothing really to dislike there.
All right. Sorry, a little coughing fit there. Chat was saying Air Up There. I've seen that one. I thought that was a decent movie. They're saying Julia Stiles. Is Julia Stiles in a movie that had basketball? I don't remember. But
I don't know.
You know who Julia Stiles is. One, Jason Bourne. Have you seen any of the Bourne series?
Bits and pieces. I don't know if I've ever seen one start to finish, but I've probably seen parts of all of them.
All right. But you have seen 10 Things I Hate About You.
Yeah, of course, multiple times.
All right. There we go. Chat. Adam has seen 10 Things I Hate About You multiple times, but of the 5 Bourne movies, he's only seen bits and pieces. Just feel free to attack, particularly on Twitter, so more people can see this. Detroit at Milwaukee. Detroit on the back-to-back. We will have to see if Blake Griffin is going to grace us with his presence. Drummond, this isn't exactly the best matchup for him against Milwaukee, but he is 8,300 on DraftKings. He always does have 20-20 upside in these. I don't know that I really want to get there. I'm curious for your take on that. And then you have Giannis, who is at an apex price point, the likes of which have not really been seen this season. 12,000 on DK, 12,900 on FanDuel. That's the highest FanDuel price I remember, at least for a slate of this size. Start us off with Detroit. Are you also operating under the assumption that Griffin is out?
Yeah, I mean, obviously keep an eye out for news on that, but I'm assuming he sits. If he plays, I think Drummond is a good play at 8,300. If he sits, I think Drummond is like the easiest play on the board. Obviously, he just becomes more productive without Griffin. There's plenty of blowout risk here, but you kind of have to live with that. Really, really good price tag for Drummond with or without Blake, but even better if he's out. If Blake sits, I would expect that Markieff Morris gets the start. I have him at 26 minutes. I have Christian Wood at 22. Wood's only 4K on DraftKings, so he'd be a pretty solid value if Griffin is out. Keefe is 4,400, so he'd be an okay value as well. And then you have, the Langston Galloway, Bruce Brown. Neither one of them I think is like a great play, but they're both guys that you can use as, kind of filler in tournament lineups.
All right. Don't Embiid my status in the premium chat says the movie is based on Othello. That was Julia Stiles here. And Josh Harnett. Wow. So there was a little bit of basketball in that. Celtic Pride, The Sixth Man, Glory Road. Those are some other games that are out there. So Eddie. Have you seen Eddie with Whoopi Goldberg?
No.
That was kind of an amusing movie. So there we are. A lot of fun on that one. So let's talk about our plans for tonight. Giannis Antetokounmpo, is he going to be involved, Adam, at his apex price?
A lot will depend on obviously how much value opens up. Like if Blake is out, you get more value. If Whiteside's out, on FanDuel in particular, you get more value with Scal. So that'll really make a big difference. Like I think that Giannis is obviously a really good play. Even if you project like 34 minutes, he's for the season averaging about 1.93 DraftKings points per minute. If you look at his numbers going back to last year without Middleton, his rates go up even more. So it's not a good defensive team for Detroit either. So I think that Giannis is a really, really good option. It's just a matter of if you have enough value to get up to him.
Right.
I Giannis to LeBron, where Giannis is 12K and LeBron's 11-1.
Okay. How do you feel about Eric Bledsoe as a direct comparator to Fred VanVleet?
I prefer VanVleet just because on DraftKings he's actually 300 less. I think he plays. I'm projecting VanVleet for 38 minutes. I'm projecting Bledsoe for 30. So that's a really, really big gap to make up in terms of projection. But I'm assuming you'll also get a pretty nice ownership difference. Like right now on DraftKings, VanVleet is at 19%. Bledsoe is at 6%. So it makes him an interesting tournament pivot, either directly in place of VanVleet or in addition to him, because I think that if you're going to get 30 minutes from Bledsoe with increased usage without Middleton, increased assist percentage, it's a good matchup against Detroit. Milwaukee has a 121 total. Obviously, Bledsoe is capable of taking on a big offensive role in any given game, and maybe that's how Giannis doesn't have a monster game, is that Bledsoe has a bigger game than usual. So in lineups where you don't have Giannis, you can still get a high upside Milwaukee piece by going to Bledsoe.
All right. I believe but more importantly, Anthony Davis, not that Anthony Davis, but the Anthony Davis in YouTube chat, has just set a record with a $50 super chat, Adam. That is wow. I thank you, Anthony, and I'm glad you are enjoying the content. If you have any questions, put them in here. You, of course, get priority. You don't even have to put the little dollar signs next to it for the rest of today. But congratulations on your victories out there, because that is definitely a big baller splash in the pot, shall we say there, Adam? Splash in the pot. Rolo, Brolo, DiVincenzo, Sterling Brown, anything else perhaps on the late slate only as we head into our final game of it?
Yeah, I like Brolo. His price tag's still affordable. He's only 5,300 on DraftKings. He played 30 minutes last game. He sucked, but the minutes were there. You're getting 28 to 30 more often than not in competitive games. It's not a bad matchup for him either. He can pull Drummond away from the basket. He doesn't depend on rebounding, so I'm not too concerned with the fact he's going up against Drummond. I do think he should get some open looks where Drummond probably is late to close out on him. So I think it's a pretty nice spot for Brolo. I would rank him in terms of bucks. I would say Giannis, then Bledsoe, then Brolo. But I think I'll have a lot of exposure to all three guys.
All right. Today the scoring is the scheduling a little bit different. So we got 2 games at 7, 3 at 7:30, 2 at 8, 1 at 8:30, and 1 at 9. So really no super late games today. As we look ahead to Sunday, there's going to be a 4-game main slate that's going to go off at 6. We will have live before lock on Sunday at 5 o'clock. That will be with Fast Eddie Fear tonight. We'll double check. As far as I know, we're going to go at 6 and just hit all of the highlights. We won't be doing a game by game breakdown because there are 9 games, and you guys are going to want to get as many of Eddie's thoughts as possible. And then as we head into next week, it is, of course, Thanksgiving week, so sort of uneven scheduling here. We got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 games on Monday, just 2 on Thursday, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. Everybody's playing, well, almost everybody. All but 2 teams are playing on Wednesday. No games on Thursday. And then Friday of next week, post-Thanksgiving, there's a nooner. Boston and Brooklyn will be playing at noon, and then we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 games, and then Saturday, really a weird one, 4 games. One of those is at 5 o'clock, so we could see just a 3-game main slate next Saturday, but that gets you through the holiday time there. We have a lot of shows coming up today. In 10 minutes, we've got the NFL DFS strategy show with Chris Rendon and Sal Vitri. That, of course, is sponsored by Yahoo as well. It's the final look for that series, which runs Monday through Saturday at 11 o'clock. 2 o'clock today, we've got On the Contrary. That is going to be Alex, Chris Spags, and we'll have to see who the special guest is for today. I'm not sure if it's a reprisal of anyone or if they're bringing in a new one, but they have had 11 different guests. We'll see what happens here for week 12. At 4 o'clock, you're going to get the NHL strategy show. Of course, it's Hockey Night in Canada. There's a ton of NHL games as well as content. And then, as I mentioned, 6 o'clock, you're going to get the live before lock with one fast Eddie Fair. Adam, we're heading into the final game, the hammer, if you will. We've got New Orleans going into Utah. Utah played last night. It was. I went back and was looking at the box score. Kind of an interesting one there for Utah. Golden State had some players that did. Kai Bowman had himself a nice game. A couple other guys made some hefty contributions here. That was a bit of a surprise for me. I mean, Utah ended up winning. I think it was by 5 or 6. They a lot of that was garbage time where Golden State came back. They dropped 37 overall points in the fourth quarter there. Utah had kind of owned them up to that point, but it was interesting seeing Bowman and Burks, Revenge, Spellman, even Chris was rather solid. If we look at the starters here for Utah, Bojan Bogdanovic played 35, Royce O'Neal 32, Gobert 35, Conley 31, Mitchell 35. To me, that feels like on their back-to-back that could help it could help New Orleans stay in the game a little bit longer, which keeps those guys on the floor a little more despite the 7-point projected victory by the Utah Jazz. Talk to me a little bit about the Jazz for starters here.
Pretty nice matchup going up against the Pels. It is a back-to-back, and last night ended up being competitive, which isn't, I guess, the best, but I'm not too concerned about it. Mitchell's price tag still really, really affordable. He's playing normally 35, 36-minute competitive game, has a 30.5% usage rate this season. So he's the guy that I like the most. Then I think Bojan Bogdanovic actually is a pretty interesting option. He has the second highest usage rate on the team this season. He's playing 34, 35 minutes. It's, again, a pace-up spot where he should get some open looks. So I think that maybe you get a little bit lower ownership on him because it's the price point where, normally we don't want to pay it, but he's had a different role on the Jazz this year than he has previously in his career. So I think that he's a decent contrarian play. And then Rudy Gobert priced up a little bit, but a matchup where I think he should have success. So I would say Mitchell 1, then Bogdanovic, then Gobert, then Conley for me.
All right. Yeah, Conley's actually been pretty solid the last few games. That's good to see him kind of rounding back into form. I think he was 32, 33. So, it's always a question of is this the decline? He's had just a plethora of injuries throughout the time, but we'll have to see. Let's see. We have another super chat. Victor Melendez would like to say he's no Anthony Davis, but he can be a Dudley. That is our catchphrase for the rest of the day. Victor, thank you for the Finsky there, the $5. And Anthony says he is the real Anthony Davis. He was on this earth first. So, all right, there you go. You do have claim to the name first. Wrapping things up here, Adam, moving to the other side, we have The Pellies with Derek Favors will not be going against his former squad. He's going to be out for another game or two with a back injury. Still questionable, but I think trending doubtful as far as I know. Josh Hart and Jahlil Okafor here. Any updates on Hart or Okafor, and then how do you want to approach Ingram and Drew Holiday, etc., etc.?
I haven't seen anything new on Hart or Okafor. Until we get news, I'm projecting them not to play just because they haven't been. But obviously, that's news that we'll have to get throughout the day. But overall, just not a team that I'm really looking to get to all that much. A tough spot going into Utah against a slow, good defensive team. The pricing isn't great. Brandon Ingram had been really, really favorably priced on DraftKings. He jumped from $7,000 to $8,400 since his last game. Drew is at a reasonable price at $8,200, but when you start comparing him to guys around him like Donovan Mitchell on the other side of this game, Fred VanVleet, Eric Bledsoe for less, he pretty clearly falls back behind those guys, I think. So Jackson Hayes, in a tough spot, and his price tags, come up to close to 5K. I just don't really have a whole lot of interest in the Pels.
Yeah, it falls off a little bit here. Lonzo Ball, he had missed 6 games, played 20 minutes in his first game back. Probably will come off the bench again.
Yeah, I have him for 24 minutes. I haven't seen anything on how many minutes to expect, but that kind of just seems like a natural progression to me.
All right, shout out in chat. We're just going to go with GB, dropping $5 Canadian. I do not want to mispronounce your name, but thank you for the Finsky there. Canadian style. We're international now, Adam. We are international. Any final thoughts before we get on out of here and turn things over to the DFS NFL strategy show?
I don't think so. Just obviously, I think the biggest news that we need to keep an eye out for is Blake Griffin, Hassan Whiteside, and then there's kind of some smaller pieces that should trickle in.
All right. Let's do a little customer service. Mcroft bought premium Slack but can't sign into the Slack channel. What do? You can reach out to support@osmo.com. They can help you out. But generally, if you go to the Osmo Slack, it is going to be your same email that you used for your Osmo account to get into Slack. So if you've got Slack set up, if they're not matching emails, it's not going to let you in. But if you hit up support@osmo.com, they can get you, or slide into the DMs on Osmo Twitter, and they can help you out a little more quickly. With that, again, reminder, plethora of shows here coming after us. 11 o'clock you get NFL, 12 o'clock you get 2 o'clock you get On the Contrary NFL. Somewhere in the mix there is going to be Jay Kari talking some NHL. And then we also, of course, have Live Before Lock tonight at 6 o'clock featuring one Fast Eddie Fear. Thank you to our sponsor, Yahoo. With that, you can follow Adam at ShipMyMoneyDFS. I am at EMACDFS. And, of course, it is Osmo_COM. With that, gamers,